The toughest schedule in the Big Ten, maybe the toughest schedule in all of college football, unfortunately, belongs to the Wisconsin Badgers. Ryan Harings of Locked On Badgers is here. I went through the schedule, Ryan, picking each game. The win total, according to our friends at FanDuel, is 5.5. I legitimately did want, because I think Billy Edwards is an upgrade at quarterback. I don't think Luke Fickell's incompetent at head coach. They've got a new offensive coordinator. I wanted to get them to a bowl game. I just couldn't quite do it. I can see it, but I need to be talked into it, and I need to know which game I need to swap here, because it's going to be a solid start outside of Alabama. I think Wisconsin is going to start 3-1 and 4-2. They play Miami of Ohio, Middle Tennessee State, at Alabama, Maryland, at Michigan, Iowa. I think they go unbeaten in the home games. I think they lose both of the road games. Then the back half it's just rude. It's just rude. The easiest game on the back half is probably Washington at home or at Minnesota. I don't know what the Badgers did to upset Tony Petitti's scheduling group, but clearly they did something. So I land on 5-7. That's an under 5.5. I think is a really good number for this Wisconsin team and the schedule they've got. But I land under. Talk me into 6-6.
I mean, listen, you hit on a lot of the reasons nationally people are looking at this and saying, I don't know. It feels like a 5-win team. It feels like this isn't going to get better. I would counter with this. And before the show, we talked a little bit. I said, I'm going to talk you into it. Not really my job. I don't necessarily want to talk you into it, but I do think there's some points to consider. Do you know Wisconsin's record last year? 5-7, right? So they were 5-7 last year. They played Bama last year, Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Minnesota. They went 5-7 basically against this schedule last year. They did that with Braden Locke. They did it in a situation where they almost beat Penn State. They hung with Oregon. I mean, you and I talked about that game.
Yeah.
They did it with one of the worst quarterbacks in the Big Ten, a non-functional passing game. They did it with a front seven that was bereft of talent. They finished 134th in the country in tackles for loss. They went out in this offseason and brought in 6 guys on the defensive line and Billy Edwards. If they're just a little better at either of those spots, they win 6 or 7 games last year against this very same schedule. The other thing I would talk about, big thing that Luke Fickell has done, his first 2.5 years in this program, he's recruited really well. Among the best recruiting classes that Wisconsin has really ever gotten. If you look at the recruiting rankings, the composite rankings, those players are now sophomores. Those players are now coming into the program. We just did a squad show. We talked about Dylan Jones. He's going to be a really good running back for this program. There's a couple receivers they got that they really like. The offensive line that they've recruited well is maturing. They have a couple linebackers they really like. Now, some of that's potential, absolutely. But that's what happens when you recruit well. It's that young potential starts to mature in a program that Luke Fickell has proven he can develop and mature that talent, because this is what he did at Cincinnati. They brought in highly talented athletes. They developed them. And by year 2 or 3 in that conference, that program was a lot better. So I get it. It's a brutal schedule. Wisconsin is not going to win 8-9 games, but they won 5 last year with worst play quarterback and worst play in the trenches. So I feel like you look at that, Badger fans have optimism that Billy Edwards is worth a win over Braden Locke. And I think that's quite fair, actually.
Okay. That's a compelling argument. Here's where I struggle, and I think I know what the answer is going to be, but I don't want to sell the program that I'm going to mention here short, or the team, quite frankly, because they like what they've got at quarterback. And as we also talked about on the Locked On Big Ten squad yesterday, they've got one of the best running backs in the Big Ten. The road environment's tough to play. Almost beat Penn State last year. So the road games that Wisconsin has to go through, it is a gauntlet of all gauntlets in college football. It's so tough. At Bama, at Michigan, at Oregon, at Indiana, and at Minnesota is the one that I was referring to. The weakest teams, I think, of that group are Minnesota and Michigan, but that doesn't mean I think those are weak teams. I know that those fan bases are going to show up to that stadium. Maybe if Minnesota struggles at the end of the year, there isn't quite that extra level of juice, but those are physical teams, and those trench guys you mentioned are going to be really tested in those 2 games. Those are the spots Maybe if I'm overvaluing Illinois going into this season, they're my preseason number 4 team in my Big Ten power rankings. Maybe at home you can snag them, but one of those 3 games you're going to have to find a way to win. Which one to you, at Michigan, Illinois at home, or at Minnesota, rings to you as the most likely to result in a Wisconsin win?
I think Michigan's tough. I know there's a lot of Badger fans, and we talked about it, that new quarterback. We don't really know who Sharon Moore is. It's still Michigan. You're going to the big house. I think that's a tough one. If you give me those 3, I think it's probably Minnesota, who did lose a decent amount. They do have a new quarterback, and we're not really sure what that's going to look like. He's going to have to jump up a level of play. Darius Taylor's great, but they lost
new defensive coordinator as well. Their defensive coordinator got poached by Miami.
New defensive coordinator, and they lost a couple cogs on that offensive line from that running game last year. I think that's one. I mean, here's what I would say too. I think, and this is somewhat reflective of the era we live in, the generation we live in. Sometimes we rely a little too much on what just happened and ignore the last 20, 25 years. Wisconsin has a bit of a track record across several coaches. It's not just Fickell, across Gary Anderson, Bielema, Chris, going all the way back. I don't know if I'd be so quick to just assume a game like Minnesota, Indiana, Illinois are going to be games that Wisconsin can't win. Or I know you're not saying they can't win, but Wisconsin, I don't know about Indiana. I'm not sure that's a loss for Wisconsin, truthfully. Indiana is going to not be tested as much as the Badgers are. There is value in being tested. And I don't know about an Illinois program either that, quite frankly, is certainly Bielema has done a great job there, and Altmaier is one of the most veteran quarterbacks in this conference. But that's not a team Wisconsin can't beat either. I think what's happened a little bit, and I'm rambling a little bit, but I think what's happened a little bit nationally, and I get it. I get it from this perspective. Last year's Wisconsin team left a really bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. But over the last 20 to 25 years, that could very easily just be a little dip in a program that has been among the most consistent in college football. And let's be careful about overvaluing one data point in a 20 to 25-year stretch, because a lot of those things that made Wisconsin successful, some of those in-state players, the strength and development, the reliance on the running game, which new offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes is coming in and delivering, a lot of those things that made Wisconsin so successful and so hard for those Illinois-type teams to beat, I think are going to be back this year to some degree. And I wonder if we're overvaluing one good year of Indiana, Illinois, a little stretch of Minnesota, and overvaluing one bad year of Wisconsin.
I think that's a pretty reasonable argument.
I got you up to 6 yet. You were at 5.
I want to. And by the way, this is not me saying Michigan or Wisconsin rather is not going to beat any good teams. I think Iowa is also facing a brutally tough schedule, respectable program. I don't think that's going to be an easy game to win, but I think they will. I think Washington's a team that takes a step forward this year. I think Wisconsin wins that game. You're certainly not going to be able to argue that they won't be tested by the end of the season. But at Indiana, maybe look at that home game against Illinois. Maybe that's a spot where the Illini stumble. And I don't think that the talent gap between Illinois and Wisconsin is as big as what it might be when Wisconsin takes the field on the road in Tuscaloosa, or when they play Ohio State, or when they play Oregon. But Oregon, if Oregon were at home, I would have that one as like a potential kind of upset pick, not just because of what happened last year, but because Oregon's just replacing a lot from last season. Maybe Ohio State gets interesting. Maybe they hang with Oregon on the road. Maybe there's just a lot of... I just don't know which one. Like, Minnesota would probably be the one. Gosh, the quarterback point is a really good one. You might have won me over. But I just... Like, PJ Fleck's track record is also not one I want to disregard and just say, "Oh, this guy can't coach. Well, they don't do that." Like, no. They won 8 games last year, and people looking around going, it was fine. Wisconsin would love to win 8 games right now.
Agreed. Oh, and that's a very good point. Like, I almost look at it less in terms of this individual game they need to win, and more clump that group together. Illinois, Indiana, Washington, Maryland, Iowa. I just think they're going to win their share of them. I mean, because they're going to have the 2 early wins. I think they get Maryland. I think they get Iowa as well. Out of that rest of that group, they're not going to be able to win 2 more. And that's not even to say, like, you can trip up a good team too. Like, I just don't think Wisconsin's going to lose every tough game on the schedule, right? And I know you're not saying that because you have them, or with the win against Iowa. But God, they were so close last year to 6. And I'm telling you, Braden Locke was a disaster. And
Yeah, that's a good. That okay. Okay, live here as we record the show. As much, I'm sorry, PJ Fleck. I know you're rowing the boat out there. Wisconsin to 6-6. I think they'll be like Florida from last year. Brutal schedule, overperform expectations, save Luke Fickell's job. Okay. I'm on board. That's how good my man Ryan Harings of Locked On Badgers is. That is it for today. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.